Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the final reactor for today, March 26th, 2021. I'm your host, Tristan. This is Phoebe. She's, being clingy again. Hello. So, I am Tristan, and I am the host of YouTube channel Step Back History, and Tristan Won't Shut Up. I stream 2 times a week, typically on Mondays from 12 to 2 with Mia Mulder, and Tuesday nights from 7 to 9 with just me. Though there will be a bit of a schedule change just for next week. Next Friday, instead of having the Step Back Tonight on Tuesday night at 7, we're going to have a special stream on Friday at 12:30, and it's going to be with Mexi. So look forward to that. Mark your calendar. That's going to be on April 2nd at 12:30 Eastern Time. So we'll have fun with that. I go by he, him pronouns. You can find my work at stepbackhistory.com or tristanwon'tshutup.com. If you wish to support my work, you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory, where you can sign up for as little as 84 cents a month with a yearly subscription, get videos early, and see them without ads. If you also want to help through streaming and you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free Twitch Prime subscription every month. If you use that on an independent Twitch creator, you get to send them a little bit of dough, and it's at no extra cost to you. It's money that basically is yours that Amazon gets to keep if you don't use it. So use it. Use it every month on some independent Twitch creator. If you choose me, I'll be very grateful, but please just use it in some capacity. As for content that's coming out, I have a video coming out on, hopefully, I guess not today, probably. Is that a Feminist Frequency shirt? Yes, it is. I have a video coming out sometime next week. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Probably Tuesday, if I were to hazard a guess. So, if you are, though, a patron, you can watch it now. So, that's a thing. That's an incentive. If you want to watch my new video this weekend, just, maybe drop, what's 86 cents, 84 cents times 12. So that's $10.08 to see the video this weekend, or, and also every other, video that I release for the next year, so there's a whole thing. Yeah, and if you are new, if this is your first time watching the stream, you're watching the last of my stream I'm still streaming, but the last of this reactor stream where we watch stuff together. I am canceling the series because I want to open up my schedule for some other things, plus I need to be taking a little bit more time to manage my own stress levels, because I think I was feeling very overwhelmed, and I have some really cool new projects that I want to work on, so this is me making a little bit of room for it. Okay. I think that's everything. So my goal today, instead of my typical way of choosing videos, is we're just going to try and watch as many of them as possible. I've got a list of about 20 videos that are the last ones on the list, and I have them sorted from shortest to longest. So hopefully we will just watch as many of these as possible by just watching the shortest ones we can. So, on that note, let's get started with the very first one. Let's turn off the music. Or I guess turn the volume all the way down. And then, let's go.
Over the past decade, everyone from foreign-funded protesters to homegrown activists have attempted to landlock our resources. While we've been busy reducing GHG emissions and maintaining the
Okay, so this is a video about, this is basically a piece of pro-oil propaganda from some sort of Canadian think tank. So already it's saying that there are foreign-funded protesters, which happen to be like the Wet'suwet'en people who didn't want an oil pipeline being built through their unceded indigenous territory. But, so we're already off to a good start. I guess I should preface this by saying that Canada is one of these countries that Canada's Conservative Party, and Alberta in specific, the sort of petrol-producing province, or the biggest petrol-producing province, is essentially a doomsday cult that is dedicated to destroying what remains of our biosphere at all costs, and that no amount of environmental destruction is too high to be worth sacrificing even the slightest amount of reduction in profits. Alberta has put itself in a death grip where everything is so hopelessly dependent on just keeping oil production going forever that they've gone to the point where they actually have made an entire government office that exists for one single purpose, which is to destroy any media that criticizes Alberta oil sands. So just like to give you a context as to like who's making this. This is done by sort of a Necronomicon type cult that is dedicated to destroying everything to make sure that the oil flows.
Highest environmental and human rights standards for energy development in the world.
This is oil, a substance that is literally destroying the planet. To say the highest environmental standards, it's like we have the highest safety standards for injecting fentanyl directly into our eyeballs in the entire world.
Hard to keep this country running and Canadians in jobs, even as our critics do everything in their power to keep our resources locked away. Today we say,
swear, like I literally I just want to check here quick. This can't be. Look at this guy's mask. Like, I see several skulls. I'm just hoping that you don't just like in their advertisement. There's not just like one of these has some sort of some sort of fascist symbol on them.
Canadians in jobs, even as our critics do everything in their power to keep our resources locked away.
Oh boy.
Today we say, enough is enough. For too long we've been taken for granted by all too many people who vigorously condemn what we do, while relishing in the fruits of our labor every day of their lives. We're tired of our natural resources being sold to American customers at bargain prices. And it sickens us to see our strong and free nation buying oil from countries that violate every value Canadians hold dear.
They're talking about China. Or no, they're talking about Venezuela, which is like where we get, if we import oil, it's usually from the United States or Venezuela.
It's time for us to tell our story. A story we can all be proud of. A story that positively impacts millions of lives across our beautiful country. The truth. Global energy needs are increasing every year.
So no discussion of climate change. No discussion of the existential threat to humanity that our continued addiction to this energy that they're producing. They're not, notice how they're saying energy. They're not specifically saying petrol. They're not saying oil and gas because, there are parts of Canada that generate tons of energy. In fact, the largest electricity exporting province besides Alberta for the country is Quebec, which does it through an entire network of hydroelectric dams. Where I live, Ontario, is mostly funded through a series, or mostly powered through Niagara Falls and nuclear reactors. So this is specifically trying to make the argument that it's important for Canada to preserve a non-renewable resource that is actively the main contributor to the destruction of the planet, and is the main reason why Canadians per capita are the most environmentally destructive people on the planet. The fact that we are, the amount of greenhouse output we have compared to the population of our country is absolutely devastating. And yet, this fucking propaganda is coming out. And this is the kind of shit that like, the Conservative Party will try to make an argument for.
The world needs Canadian energy. It needs the most responsibly sourced and safely delivered energy in the world. It drives our economy as much as it drives your car.
Keep in mind also that a lot of the energy that they're referring to is coming from bitumen tar sands, which is essentially open pit mining of just like this garbage like that just comes out of the ground. Every liter of gasoline produced through bitumen tar sands requires over 10 liters of water, fresh water, to process. And in doing so, the water that's left behind is so toxic and so absolutely abhorrent to the environment and to anybody who comes in contact with it, that they have to hire people full-time to sit by these tailing ponds where this liquid is kept to shoot any animals that even touch it, so that the contamination does not get into the environment. So that is the record of the safest and most ethical and most beautiful, or whatever the fuck these people are trying to say, source of this substance that is literally killing the planet comes from. And yeah, somebody pointed out that it's not even profitable at the current price of oil. The processing of bitumen is so expensive that really it only became profitable in the 20th century because the price of oil shot so high. And we're getting to the point where 2019 was probably the period of peak oil, which means that in the years in the future, our demand for petrol is probably going to start going down. What does that mean? It means the price of gas is going to get even lower, so it's going to become even less profitable. So this is Alberta doubling down on putting all of their eggs in this one basket of a fuel that we all know doesn't have a future. Just so you know.
We create jobs and build schools, playgrounds, and hospitals. We support communities, charities, and families. We fuel the arts, technology,
Also keep in mind that while Alberta was a petrol state, it didn't build any big towers like Dubai. It didn't put in any sort of capital fund like Norway did. It just translated all of its oil profits into tax breaks. So taxes are just really low in Alberta. And now that the oil's drying up, they're going to have literally nothing to show for it. They're going to have no future. They're going to have no resources to draw upon. They're going to go back to their last major natural resource, which was cows. Because before gas, it was coal and beef. And they are trying to start coal mining again, which is another fuel that is even further along the path towards death. But now that even petrol is starting to have a bit of a future, there's probably going to be some serious problems with the issue of essentially like a lack of demand. Gas prices are the highest they've been since 2008. Well, thank you. Thank you for the $5 super chat, by the way, David. I don't know exactly, what's it called? The fluctuation of gas prices is a little bit complex. The reason I'm basing the peak oil thing, it's from a report that came out in late 2020 from a group of, it's from a group of firms that focus on oil speculation and essentially looking at the sort of factors that are in place like the changes to the car industry, the changing in work environments that happened in 2020 that probably won't go entirely back to normal. All of this says together, probably not likely chance that we're going to have an oil industry that is going to have increasing demand, and that demand's probably going to start going down. Thank you, Matt, by the way, also for the super chat. How many arts, hospitals, and schools are regularly defended to make oil companies happy in Alberta? Well, yeah.
Renewables, and virtually every other industry. We are here to stay. We will continue to employ millions, feed families, fund infrastructure, pay doctors and teachers, and fill restaurants, movie theaters, and hotels. Canada needs us. The world needs us. We are Canadian Energy, and we are proud.
This is literally calling for this. All of that is in service of, they want one thing, which is the extinction of the human race, as well as a complete destruction, or what is called a mass extinction event, the absolute destruction of all life on Earth, in order to preserve the profits of the oil industry. So, isn't that fucking fun? Yeah, so oh boy, we've got some what's it called? Looks like we've got some friends from the war room already showing up in the chat, so let me just handle this real quick. Where are you? Yeah, we got chuds. I'm working on it. How would oil cause the destruction of all life on Earth? Well, all right, Lever Detected, let's get into this. So, starting in the 1950s, actually, let's go back to the 1850s, or maybe even the 1810s, when we started burning coal in order to power our industrial capacity. Now, coal is full of something called carbon. And when it is burned, when oxygen and fire is added to it, you create a gas known as carbon dioxide, otherwise known as CO2. Now, when carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere, we have a small amount of it. It is what plants crave. Here's the thing, though. It is regulated to a certain level. There's a normal amount that has to be in the atmosphere. The total amount of plants on the surface of the planet can only process so much of this stuff. Then things start to get a little wonky, because when you change the chemistry of the atmosphere, and keep in mind that also those plants are starting to die out because we're chopping all of them down too. Anyways, when you introduce and change up the gas makeup of the planet, you start to change its ability to release and maintain heat from the sun. So, sun energy comes onto our planet, and because the atmosphere is increasingly being made up of carbon dioxide and methane and other what are called greenhouse gases, the overall temperature of the planet starts to increase. This has been going on now for almost 200 years, if not longer. And we are now at a point where the amount of industry that has been hopelessly dependent on the release of carbon dioxide in order to function has created a gas mixture in our atmosphere that is so beyond what is balanceable that we are seeing major changes to the base climates of the Earth. And these changes are not good for us humans. They're going to lead to mass desertification. The increased energy being retained within the atmosphere is going to create larger storms and set off multiple feedback loops. Things that have been frozen for long periods of time that are made up of organic material will start to decay and release more carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere, leading to an even more runaway effect. Now, there was a time that something like this happened in our history. It's, well, not human history, but in Earth's history, that was sort of referred to as a great burp that happened when a whole bunch of volcanic activity happened at one time and released a whole lot of carbon dioxide. It's considered the deadliest mass extinction event in Earth's history, wiping out over 99% of all life on the planet. And we are sort of heading towards that in our own capacity. Sure, may not wipe out everybody right away, but we are setting up the precursors to not only removing the usable land for most humans, but also leading to a situation in which the biosphere, the ecosystem, the fundamental interconnectedness of life that we depend on to live, despite the fact that we're destroying it at a rapid pace, will break down. And humans typically need food and water and air. And when those things start to not function, the longevity of our species certainly seems to be in high amounts of doubt. So hopefully, this basic fact that we've known since... I just want to say the 1950s at the earliest, we've known about this, and has had oil companies actively suppress it to the point where they actually have been fined over this, where they have actively suppressed scientific discoveries related to anthropogenic climate change and leading to the possible destruction of Earth's biosphere. So, yeah. So that's why I'm just going to ban you real quick. But that, yeah, that's basically why. Is that Mexi stream at 12:30 in the afternoon or at night? I would never have this stream at midnight. So yeah, it's going to be at 12:30 in the afternoon. Okay, so that was our first video, just so you can see how it's going. Let's see what we got next. This is the rise and fall of the Inca Empire. So let's see what this is all about.
It was the Western Hemisphere's largest empire ever, with a population of nearly 10 million subjects. Over an area of more than 900,000 square kilometers, its people built massive administrative centers, temples, and extensive road and canal systems. They did so in an inhospitable, extreme terrain, all without the use of wheels, horses, iron, or even written language.
God, I need to read like a really good book on the Inca because, man, what they did was
the Inca Empire
built like a huge empire literally based out of the fucking mountains. Like, how does one do that?
Would be no more. According to legend, the ancestors of the Inca rulers were created by the sun god Inti, and they emerged from a cave called Tombo Toko. Leading 4 brothers and 4 sisters was Aya Manco, who carried a golden staff with instructions.
Someone just said they'll probably drown from climate change with the rising ocean levels. No, you'll probably just be displaced. A lot of the deaths that will come in our lifetime from climate change are going to come from the fact that desertification and the breakdown of the biosphere is going to resolve that. It's going to result in people needing to people being displaced from their home and needing to find places to live. And I don't know if you saw, But the last time we had even a tiny refugee crisis, in comparison, it was a massive refugee crisis, but it's tiny compared to what's coming. You had countries basically move the needle towards fascism at a rapid rate, and you had massive refugee camps where people are in horrible conditions and people just dying trying to get to their position. So it's most likely you're not going to drown. It's most likely you're going to die of some sort of camp disease or of starvation or thirst in some sort of refugee camp from some other, trying to escape to some other country. That is the more likely situation that is going to befall a lot of us. Someone's reading 1491. It's a very good book. One of my favorites. And it does talk a little bit about the Incas, yeah.
To find the place where it would sink into the ground, showing fertile soil. After many adventures and extensive searching, Ayamanco and his siblings reached the Cuzco Valley, where the staff pierced the ground. After fighting off the fierce local native population, they founded their capital, and Ayamanco became Manco Capac, the first Sapa Inca, or king of the Incas. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Incas first settled in this valley around 1200 CE. They remained a small kingdom until 1438, when they were nearly overrun by the neighboring Chanca tribe. The Inca king at this time...
Yeah, someone pointed out, these, places would live, because these are literally societies that lived on the sides of mountains. They would be able to grow and do different types of economic activity at different altitudes based on what they had access to, and they would trade with each other. And so you'd have similar civilizations. You'd have the same sort of tribe of people who lived in two separate communities. Half of them lived at a lower level and half of them lived at a higher level. And they would exchange things because nobody really could survive on just the things that they have on their own. So they would have to, they're reliant on this very stair-based trade network of moving things up and down the fucking Andes Mountains, which is absolutely unbelievable how powerful that is.
Viracocha and his designated heir
No biting.
fled in fear, but one of his other sons remained and successfully rallied the city's defenses. For his military skill, he became the 9th Inca ruler, assuming the name of Pachacuti, or Cataclysm. Pachacuti expanded Inca rule throughout the Andes Mountains, transforming the kingdom into an empire through extensive reforms. The empire's territory
seems energy intensive on the way up. It is, but also they were able to have a very the thing is when you talk about these civilizations, especially ones especially this civilization, it led to an actually very varied diet. A lot of times in Europe they just ate bread for most meals, but the diet and the lifestyle of the Inca was much healthier than Europeans. They were shorter because they kind of had to acclimate to lower oxygen levels, but overall, their health outcomes were way better. They maintained their teeth a lot better, and a lot of the signs of being healthy were common, while Europeans were stunted and pockmarked and diseased and weakened because they didn't know how to eat vegetables, and they just lived in a very very unhealthy environment. Don't forget the potatoes. Yeah, the Inca and the Andes Mountains is where potatoes come from. Yeah, and fish. There was heavy fishing too.
Was reorganized as Tawan Tinsuyu, or 4 quarters, with 4 divisions ruled by governors reporting to the king. Although the Inca had no writing, they used a complex system of knotted strings called quipu to record numbers and perhaps other information. A decimal-based
cool.
bureaucracy enabled systematic
Quipu is
and
pretty
efficient
amazing.
taxation of the empire's subjects. In return, the empire provided security, infrastructure, and sustenance.
It's true. Like, if I remember correctly, the only thing I do know about the Incas is that they had, like, the Inca Empire had a astonishing amount of economic controls. Like, they controlled the economy, so, like, the economy was, like, weirdly planned and managed compared to, like, what you would see in, like, a European city of a similar size.
With great storehouses containing necessities to be used when needed.
The Incas were probably overstretched when they reached Ecuador. The thing is, though, is that the Inca did a whole bunch of... wish we could read it? Okay. The Inca did a whole bunch of road building. They had a huge road network that we're still finding bits of to this day.
Great terraces and irrigation works were built, and various crops were grown in at different altitudes to be transported all over the empire. And it was during Pachacuti's reign that the famous estate of Machu Picchu was constructed. Pachacuti's son, Topa Inca, continued the empire's military expansion, and he eventually became ruler in 1471 CE. By the end of his reign, the empire covered much of western South America. Topa's son, Huayna Capac, succeeded him in 1493, but the new ruler's distant military campaigns strained the social fabric, and in 1524, Huayna Capac was stricken by fever. Spanish conquistadors had arrived in the Caribbean some time before, bringing diseases to which the native peoples had no resistance. Millions died in the outbreak, including Huayna Capac and his designated heir. The vacant throne ignited a civil war between two of the surviving brothers, Atahualpa and Huasca, greatly weakening the
They're building an
empire.
airport on Machu Picchu?
In
Jeez.
1532, after finally winning the Inca Civil War, Atahualpa and his army encountered the European invaders.
Yeah, it's true. The Inca and the
Although
Aztecs
greatly
were
outnumbered.
fairly
Francisco
recent
Pizarro
civilizations
and
when
his
the Spanish
small
arrived.
group of conquistadors stunned the king's much larger force with guns and horses, neither of which they had seen
Keep
before.
up the good work, man.
Atahualpa was taken captive
Thank you.
and killed about a year later.
Thank you for the subscription, made you say I love Amazon. God damn it.
The Spanish conquerors were awed by the capital of Cuzco. Pizarro described it as so beautiful that it would be remarkable even in Spain. Though the capital had fallen and the native population had been destroyed by civil war and disease, some Incas fell back to a new capital at Vilcabamba. And
This is also what's also fascinating. We're talking a little bit about potatoes in the chat. Is that potatoes as a crop? It's actually kind of fascinating that they became like common crops, because apparently in its like untrade, like it's poisonous in its sort of like wild form, and that they had to like selectively breed out like it being fairly toxic, and they did so.
existed for the
Same thing
next
as almonds?
40
Oh, that's
years.
interesting. I didn't know
By
that.
1572, the Spaniards had destroyed all remaining resistance, along with much of the Incas' physical and cultural.
Yeah, they're so beautiful. Shame I got to destroy it. Yeah, they had a Christian mentality. Like they did this. They had the same mentality towards Muslims in the Middle East. They had to destroy their civilization because it was Europe had this sort of imperialist mindset that all that opposed their worldview needed to be destroyed.
cultural legacy. Thus, the great Inca Empire fell even faster than it had risen.
Did Incas?
Ed
How do you
was a
use Prime to
non-profit.
subscribe? I think you have to connect your Twitch account to your Amazon account, and then when you go to subscribe, there should be like a button for Prime subscription. Someone said that they make something like vodka, and I'm very interested about Inca liquor with potato. Let's see. Because not all not all alcohol, like not all vodka is made from potatoes. Only like I think it's called Eastern vodka made in like Poland and such, that has like, if you, I went to bartending school where I had to learn about the different varieties of vodka, and Eastern vodka has a bit more of like an oily texture to it, and it's because of the potato. It seems that the main alcoholic drink that they would make in South America was something called chicha, which was made from corn. Maize chicha. Is there potato chicha? Okay, so yeah, here we go. Chicha is also made from a variety of other cultigens and wild plants, including quinoa, caniwa, peanuts, manioc, or yuca, or cassava, palm fruit, coca, oca, and chanar. So that's interesting. Yeah, it's sort of similar to a drink they had in Mexico called pulque. Why would you start domesticating a crop that wasn't at least a little bit useful in its wild form? Like, you could actually make stuff from wild grain. It could be that they could eat the potatoes. They just had to, like, cook the shit out of it or something and to get the toxins out. So it very well could be that there was a use for it. People do find ways to eat poisonous plants. Okay, well, that was fun. I like that. All right, next one is You Got Coconut Mauled.
This is the mall which I'm going to play the Coconut Mall theme song in, except it would be far too easy to just sit here and play the Coconut Mall theme. So instead, I converted my piano into a cart, and I'm going to play it in the style of Mario Kart.
That is right, I'm literally going to drive my piano around the mall and play it as if I were playing actual Mario Kart.
Oh dear.
And just hope we don't get kicked out. Honestly, this is one of the dumbest ideas I've had yet, but it was so fun to make. So I really do hope you
I guess
it.
This is a song from
leave a like if you
Mario
do.
Kart? I don't know. I've never owned a Mario Kart game, so I don't think I get the nostalgic reference here. But I do like the idea of a guy playing a piano while like being like sailed through the inside of a ball. That's fun.
Wait, hold on. 3, 2, 1, go.
It's from Mario Kart Wii. Okay, I've never had a Wii. What's it called? I got a Nintendo Switch, and that was the first console that I had ever gotten since the PlayStation 2, so I obviously missed a good chunk of it. What was that last video's channel? That was Ted Ed. They literally are doing laps? Oh, man. Good thing because of COVID, the malls are all empty. See that there's like someone following them? Oh, no. Just imagining trying to focus on playing music while, like, you're being rolled through a mall. I feel like I would have I just have to, like, keep your eyes on the keys and just don't think about what's going on around you. Yeah, this would have been much more fun to do during a time when people could actually go to the mall. Poundland. Oh, this must be Britain somewhere. Oh no. I did know that the guy who invented the mall grew up to hate them, yeah. He thought they were going to be sort of like a third place, and they just turned into a place of corporate bullshit. Did you just throw a banana peel behind their car? That's pretty great.
There we go, I hope you enjoyed that. This video was so fun to make, but it was also a hell of
That was fun. Yeah, so the person who invented the mall, the names escape me right now, but the guy who invented the mall thought of it as, like, in the age of suburbification, that the mall could act as a place for people who live in the suburbs to have, like, a common place to go to hang out and enjoy, like, you know, like that kind of third space thing, to be like a kind of place to hang out. And it was supposed to have, like, outdoor areas and a lot of, like, you know, sort of like the market square agora type feel, and it didn't become that. And they started doing work to actively stop people from hanging out in malls, and it just turned into a complete, like, opposite of what he intended. As for this video, like, I'll be honest, I didn't get a lot of the references because I don't play a lot of console games, but I will say I am a fan of taking a concept and running with it and executing it well, and that is most definitely what we got here. They definitely set out to do something, and they definitely did it, and they put a lot of effort into it, so I appreciate the effort. So next up, we've got Jordan Peterson, 12 More Rules from Spaceman. Okay, let's see what this is. I think I saw this, and this looked cursed as shit. Yeah, it's like some weird 3D cartoon thing.
Your father will have to remain in his coma for several more months. We'll be feeding him pure meat through a tube just like you asked. In the meantime, let's go party all over Europe.
Oh no.
When people think of happiness or pursuing happiness, the first thing they think of is, well, it's a pretty selfish desire. I want to be happy for me. I mean,
what is this fucking, like, Lovecrafty and Dennis Prager? Oh my god.
But I'm here to tell you that, in fact, happiness is far, far, far more than a selfish desire. It's actually a moral obligation.
This is terrifying.
Whether or not you're happy, and certainly whether or not you act happy, is a very, very altruistic endeavor.
This is cursed as fuck. I love it. Oh my god.
Make the world
the fucking birds in the audience.
People tend to make the world worse.
There's a scene in Pinocchio where Geppetto wishes on a star, right? And what it means is he lifts up his eyes beyond the horizon to something transcendent. And so he lifts his eyes up above his daily concerns, and he says, what I want more than anything else is that my creation will become a genuine individual. Right? It's a heroic gesture because it's so unlikely, and that catalyzes the puppet's transformation into a real.
This is when Jordan Peterson broke into tears over the plot of Pinocchio.
And so the trick is to get rid of your goddamn strings.
I want to be like you, Mr. Peterson.
Oh my god. This is like some horror from, like, Eastern European. This is like something you'd see in, like, a like, I don't know, The Witcher or something, like something from, like, Eastern European mythology turned horror.
I want to get into this because this is I think this is a fascinating thing with you personally. Your diet. you're on this carnivore diet
Yes.
now. This is what I mean. What's fascinating to me is I
Oh my
haven't
God.
heard any negative
What did they
stories.
do to this guy's face? Joe
Well,
Rogan.
I have a negative story.
Okay.
Okay, when we
Oh, this is the
restricted
apple cider story?
and then ate something we weren't supposed to, the reaction was absolutely catastrophic.
What did you
So-
do? What did you switch to?
Well, the worst.
How did they make Joe Rogan look like he might be an ape? Like that's like they just made like this huge brow and like I don't know.
Response, we had some apple cider that had sulfites in it, and that was really not good. Like, I was done for a month.
You were done for a month.
Oh yeah, it took me out for a month.
Oh, he's getting more ape-like every time they
Apple
cut to
cider.
him. Oh
Like,
God.
What was it doing?
Sulfites in it.
What was it doing to you?
Oh, it produced an overwhelming sense of impending doom.
Oh yeah, he had a panic attack and he blamed it on apple cider vinegar. What the fuck? This is so cursed. I love it.
Come on over here. We are intrinsically
Oh
connected
God.
to the president.
Is that oh, what the fuck is that guy's name? The Turning Point USA guy. I don't even remember his name anymore. The guy whose face is little. Charlie Kirk. Yeah.
He's with us. He's for us. If you love birds,
Oh God, it's Trump.
under a window because it's a very sad sight.
Oh God, I think that might be like Tim Pool or Ben Shapiro or one of those. I think I've seen somebody make this animation. I've seen somebody make this animation with like a Tim Pool thing where he took off his hat and there was another face or something. I don't know who's doing this. I don't know. This is from Eamon Animations. Wow.
Jesus said, take this cup. This is my blood.
I don't know who that is.
Covenant.
I said certified free.
There's Shapiro.
Wet ass Hero.
Oh, it's Sheldon Adelson? Okay.
Here is a fact.
There's Prager.
There's no God over me. There's no policeman over me. There's no
Oh
one
God!
over me. I am
Oh
God.
God! It's a centipede of Dennis Prager. Oh my God! Kenneth Copeland.
Fucking cider.
Oh, I didn't sleep that month. I didn't sleep for 25 days. I didn't sleep
What?
at all.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, not
And
good.
this is from
That would kill you.
cider.
That's what we
I think you
thought.
die after like a week
I mean,
of not
look,
sleeping or something
again,
like that. A few weeks.
I don't know what the hell I'm
Can't
talking
remember.
about.
You
But a
need
month
to
would kill
wake
you.
up, Dr. Peterson. My master. Please wake up for us. We are so lost without you.
The record for not sleeping is 11 days. Oh boy.
12 more rules.
Yeah, because I think that like what's it called? Like after 7 days or something approaching 7 days, your brain just like hard shuts off and you fall asleep. And the only people who have stayed awake past that have had some sort of brain damage where their brain actually is incapable of falling asleep anymore. And if you're awake past that point, you're probably gonna die.
What is natural must be right. Eat your meat and worship might. Stand up
Oh,
straight.
God.
Listen carefully. Accept your place within the hierarchy.
Pinocchio.
Oh no, it's what the hell's his name? Geppetto or Geppetto? Geppetto.
Clean your room. Pray to God. Obey your lords with 12 new rules.
This is fucking horrifying. I love it.
Think of all the cash. Think of all the suits. Don't you think the world needs 12 more rules?
You watch what you say, and you'll find out
What is
some
natural
things you
must
say
be
make you come
right.
apart,
Eat your
make you
meat
fall
and
apart.
worship
It's a
might.
feeling of chaotic
Stand up
weakness and
straight.
dissolution.
Listen
It's
carefully.
a sense of
Accept your
self-betrayal.
place
And then
within
if
the
you
hierarchy.
tell the truth, that pulls you together and strengthens you.
12 more rules. 12 more rules. 12
Oh god. Okay, interesting. That was a nightmare. That was beautiful. That definitely feel like some reactor finale type content. So whoever Spaceman is, thank you for that horrible video. Oh God. Okay. I'm gonna be, what's it called? If I ever get a sleep paralysis demon, now I think I'm gonna see it as Dennis Prager as a centipede. Oh boy. So, the next video is, let's see. Trudeau Liberals vote against their own campaign promise from the Rational National. All right, let's see what.
That's why we accept the report by Dr. Hoskins and the Advisory Council on the implementation of National Pharmacare.
What channel was that? That was, this is, Aamon Animations. AAMON. All right, let's see what this Trudeau thing's about.
That's why we accept the report by Dr. Hoskins and the Advisory Council on the implementation of National Pharmacare.
Since 1997, the Liberals have promised universal pharmacare. Trudeau's Liberals also promised universal pharm.
All right, important to know. This is a thing, since this is kind of insider baseball for Canadian politics, but this is a situation in which one of the things that's been like debated and trying to be pushed in Canadian politics is something called universal pharmacare, because despite the fact that Canada does have a public healthcare system, we, unlike most of the rest of the world, still have to pay for our medicine. It's cheaper than America because we don't have like health insurance type stuff, but you still have to get your pharmaceuticals covered by work health insurance, or you have to pay out of pocket. And sometimes it can be expensive. Not America expensive, but like I had to get Puffer once when I was having some phlegmy lung problems, and it cost like about $110 for about a month's supply of the stuff. I only need it for a couple months, but yeah, just it was very unfun. And paying for drugs out of pocket when you have a recurring need for a certain medication can be very expensive. And so we've been trying to push something so that we can move towards having pharmacare, i.e. having a public system so that you don't have to pay for medicine. But we don't... But it recently came up during, you know, everything with COVID, and the Liberals, despite campaigning on it, voted against an amendment to, or not an amendment, but voted against a bill that would have implemented a universal pharmacare system.
Pharmacare, yet they just voted down an NDP proposal to do it. So let me break down this story. And there's a lot of dishonesty here, especially, or only from Liberals on this.
Why is this okay, I guess I'm going to have to say this a few times during the stream. This is the last Reactor stream because I'm cutting the show to open up some more time in my day so that I can have a more manageable work-life balance, but at the same time so that I can put a few more hours into making step back videos and on some other projects that I have in the oven. So it's making room for a healthier Tristan brain and a healthier better step back release schedule.
Issue about why the NDP, in their mind, why their proposal was not possible. It's all BS. I'll break it down here. First, from HuffPost, Bill C-213, the Canada Pharmacare Act, tabled by veteran BC MP Peter Julian, was defeated Wednesday at a second reading by a vote of 295 to 32, with the Conservatives, Bloc Québécois, and the vast majority of Liberals voting against the proposed legislation. The bill won support from 2 Liberal MPs, Toronto's Nathan Erskine-Smith and New Brunswick's Wayne Long, as well as Ontario Tory MP Ben Lobb. 3 Green MPs and 2 independents, including Jody Wilson-Raybould, also voted in favor of the bill. Just a little shout-out here. Occasionally, there are...
It will definitely make me feel a little bit better to not have the stream on my Friday afternoons, so that I can get some more video stuff done. I'm looking very much forward to working on the next video. The next video I'm working on is on the Armenian genocide, and while that's, going to be terrifying and very bad situation, I am looking for. It's a video I've been wanting to make for a long time. So, yeah, having some more time to do things has been good. And also, there's some cat drama going on.
Some good liberals. Smith is basically, a member of the NDP. I would say that, but he's somebody who is consistently very progressive on these issues. I'm not really sure why he's even a liberal MP, but you see here how it broke down. Liberals voting against universal pharmacare, even though they promised once again to do it. Now, let me show you some of their excuses as to why. Andy Fillmore here, who's a Liberal MP, says, how much did the NDP pharmacare bill commit to spend on pharmacare? Answer, an egg. I guess it means 0. That should tell you what you need to know about their efforts to mislead. Now, speaking of misleading, this is incredibly
But how are you going to pay for it?
Member bills can't commit to spending funds. Of course, Andy's not going to tell you that. This bill was just the first step in the process. NDP MP Matthew Green tweeted out in response to Andy saying, looks like either Andy didn't read the bill or he's acting terribly in bad faith here, knowing that this bill was the first step as per their own Liberal pharmacare report by former Liberal Minister of Health, Dr. Hoskins. So which one is it, Andy? Your constituents aren't stupid. But Andy apparently is treating his constituents as morons, as he himself, back in 2019, October, tweeted out, a re-elected Liberal government will implement national universal pharmacare so that all Canadians have the drug coverage they need at an affordable price. Hashtag Halifax. Once again, Liberal lie.
Those $2,000 pharmacare checks are going to go right out the door the second we're elected.
Nice. Moving on. Here's another argument that was...
So Tristan doesn't want to get dogpiled by every tanky online. The issue with trying to make a really good video on what's going on in Xinjiang right now is that someone asked if I'm going to make a video about what's going on with like Uyghurs and such. First of all, that's kind of stuff that's going on right now, which is sort of out of the scope of Step Back History. But it's also a situation in which, unless you speak the language, it's sort of impossible to know what's going on, because right now it seems that everybody who is trying to report on the situation has some sort of axe to grind or some sort of geopolitical goal. And unless you have, like, linguistic skills on the ground to figure out what's going on is a big old question mark. And definitely, at least, it's not enough for me to commit to making a video that I would be able to feel like I could stand behind, because I would hate to say something terrible like, conclude that something's not happening and then find out later that, we did another Rwandan genocide where we looked the other way. So, yeah, trying to find the truth between two of the biggest propaganda machines in the world is sort of difficult.
Brought up here. The reason the NDP put forward the pharmacare bill they did today is for political gain, not because the proposed act is workable. Pharmacare cannot be imposed on provinces. It must be developed in conjunction with them, because Constitution. But they know that. Hashtag Canadian Poly. More BS here. That actually is not true. This is wholly inaccurate, as James Hutt here, of Leap.org, tweets out, this is wholly inaccurate and misleading. Healthcare is both provincial and federal. This is literally how Medicare works. The bill is modeled on the same principle as the Canada Health Act, which offers funding to provinces to implement a program. Let's go even deeper into that BS. Kiana here, who is the co-chair of Canada's Young New Democrats, tweets out, anyone who thinks the federal government can't legislate pharmacare similarly to the Canada Health Act is welcome to DM me, and I'll send them my first-year constitutional law notes. The provincial jurisdiction argument is an inaccurate, cowardly excuse that limits access to life-saving meds. She goes on here to say, more directly, Fed spending power is in the Constitution. The Canada Health Act is federal. It's basically transferring money to provinces with strings attached. The power to provide services or to turn down the money is still provincial. Would be the same for pharma. So, all of the excuses here that Liberals are throwing out as to why they cannot support the NDP proposal is just complete BS. Now, the question arises, why, then, didn't Liberals support this? If they apparently support universal pharmacare, nothing wrong with the NDP proposal here, why didn't they support it? Well, lobbying at least plays a piece of this. So, of course, lobbying a huge issue in Canadian politics. Since the launch of the Liberal government's Advisory Council for the Implementation of National Pharmacare in February 2018.
Yeah, Liberals will... This is like the thing you have to know about the Liberal Party in Canada, is that they constantly campaign on things that are just them stealing policies from the NDP. And then when they actually get power, the only thing they do is implement all the legislation that the Conservatives would pass. That's essentially Canadian politics in a nutshell.
Pharmaceutical and insurance industries have ramped up their efforts to maintain the status quo, as revealed in a 2019 report by the Canadian Federation of Nurses Unions. They have exerted influence through lobbying and advertising, enlisting industry-linked think tanks to spread their message and pouring millions of dollars into cash-strapped patient advocacy groups to sway their positions. A search of the lobby registry by the Council of Canadians revealed that just in the last year, federal officials had at least 443 contacts from representatives of the pharmaceutical industry, private insurers, and pharma-funded patient advocacy groups. In the same period, CFNU, one of the strongest voices for pharmacare, had only 17 such contacts. So, the lobbying here, 443 to 17, clearly plays a piece. But also, just generally, liberals lie. They have promised pharmacare since 1997. 1997. Where is it? How often do liberals need to be in power to deliver on this promise? Once again, just a complete BS lie. A broken campaign promise from Trudeau's liberals.
Man, Trudeau has not kept like a single campaign promise, so it's not surprising. All right, next we got here is why are India's farmers angry? Let's find out.
Let's talk about what are probably the biggest protests happening anywhere in the world right now. Farmers in India have been demonstrating almost non-stop for months. They say new laws to improve agriculture are going to help big business but hurt small farmers. The protests even got Greta Thunberg and Rihanna chiming in, and lots of Indian media telling them to butt out.
Some American, Swedish, and Canadian citizens went on a tweeting spree against him.
So what is it about these laws that farmers don't like? Why does the Indian government think the protesters have it all wrong? And why is this about so much more than just
He did legalize weed. That's the only thing he did.
How do we feed everyone?
Yeah, liberals will get elected on like, let's do pharmacare and let's like be progressive and I'm going to have the 50-50 gender parity cabinet and everything. And then he will fire 2 of his cabinet ministers that are women, for including the first Indigenous Attorney General of Canada, because she wouldn't do corruption crimes on his behalf. And then on top of that, buy an oil pipeline and then campaign selling a t-shirt saying, we believe in climate change. Oh, yeah. Yeah, fuck.
Protect farming jobs and save the planet all at the same time. It's something most countries are trying to figure out. A lot of it comes down to choosing what kind of system they want. In some places, the farming industry is driven by business. In others, like the European Union, governments subsidize agriculture. That's the juncture India is at right now. For a long time, farming there has relied on subsidies and a whole lot of regulation. It's one way of supporting the nearly 1.4 billion people there, given that about half of them work in agriculture. But in India, farming's been in trouble for a while. It only accounts for 1/6 of India's GDP. There are issues around land ownership, irrigation, corruption, and unpredictable weather because of global warming. And all that's caused a lot of...
Oh man, hope that climate change denier guy from earlier in the stream is still here to watch that.
In 2019 alone, over 10,000 farmers committed suicide in India. Maybe there was a drought because of climate change, or there was a locust attack, or they took a loan and now they cannot return it because the crops failed.
So something had to change. The government and the farmers both agree on that. What they can't agree on is how. Last year, the government brought in 3 laws to modernize the agriculture industry. One of the changes farmers are talking about relates to who they do business with. Most farmers have relied on state-controlled wholesale markets called mandis, where they're guaranteed a minimum price for their produce. The mandis then sell to buyers like supermarkets. But under the new laws, buyers can avoid the mandis and do business directly with the farmers. Plenty of economists and the ruling BJP party say that's an obvious win.
You will be in a better position.
This is what Canada has done to have a very robust and stable farming market, especially in Saskatchewan for a long time. Breaking it would ruin shit. Just like how in Canada, they broke it by privatizing it, and now, this is about the wheat board in Saskatchewan, and it fucking was a disaster.
To negotiate better pricing. There are many middlemen. They exploit this poor farmer, and they make more money than the farmer themselves.
But farmers and their unions are worried about being taken advantage of, that the mandi markets will eventually disappear, even though the government says that won't happen, and that big corporations will demand lower prices from small farmers who have little bargaining power.
What farmers in much of India are fearing is that with the government gradually deregulating agriculture, the prices will plummet and the corporations will be the price setters rather than the government, and definitely not the farmer.
There's so much more to these laws, and farmers have a bunch of other concerns. A lot of it boils down to a lack of trust. It hasn't helped that the government rushed these laws through Parliament last year without any real discussion. That's what the farmers and opposition parties say. So they want the laws gone, and they're sending a message. A convoy of tractors from India's northern states descended on the capital, but they were blocked at the city's gates. So they set up 3 main campsites, and they're huge. Hundreds of thousands of people have been living there for weeks.
There is a rotating system where a group of people from our village will come to the protest sites, whereas the others will look after the fields.
And things have gotten pretty heated.
Oh boy. Yeah, this is like the biggest strike in world history, isn't it? Or something like
On
absolutely
India's Republic
like
Day,
huge like
protesters
that.
breached the walls of the Red Fort, one of the city's main monuments, and police confronted them there. Police have also been closing in on the farmers' campsites, using rows of barricades and barbed wire.
The police is digging up trenches and building fortifications around the farmers' protest sites as though they are preparing for a war.
But they've gone further than that.
Jammed internet access around protest sites in New Delhi. Ordered Twitter to block accounts of farmers' unions.
Yeah, if you had any like doubts that like there's some serious like strides towards fascism going on underneath Narendra Modi, yeah, just look at this kind of stuff.
And news outlets, and charged certain journalists with sedition over their reporting.
And then there's the media wars, especially after Western celebrities started commenting on the crackdown. And Indian celebrities hit back.
Hitting back, Kangana tweeted saying that Greta is a Dumbo kid and a spoiled brat who made a big blunder by revealing the international plot to defame India.
So this has snowballed into something bigger than just farming. They're talking about people's right to dissent, police
There's never a situation in which nationalism doesn't look childish and evil.
violence, even the whole idea of democracy in India. And some say party politics are making it all worse. Critics of Prime Minister Narendra Modi think he's creating business opportunities for his rich friends. Then you've got the ruling party and state media blaming the protests on opposition groups.
The banned terror outfit Communist Party of India Maoist has infiltrated the farm protests.
They point to these protesters waving a Sikh flag as proof that separatists from the north are involved too.
The poor farmer feels that their land will be taken away.
Oh no!
Giant corporate, but
because a Sikh would never have any reason to be interested in farming.
Members, particularly the Peaceful Opposition Party.
I think the government would like nothing more than to see the protests ending. But the farmers, they will only move if their demands are met, which is basically the repeal of these 3 farm laws.
Those laws are meant to reform the industry, but they now seem to stand in the way of any progress at all. What's missing is a whole lot of trust, but they have a starting point. Pretty much everyone agrees that farming in India needs fixing. So hopefully that was a useful primer. There is so much more in these farm laws and plenty of politics playing out. As always, check out our website, aljazeera.com, for the latest news, and I'll see you next week.
That was pretty good. I liked it. Alrighty. What we got next? Anyone oh, fuck. Who did this? Which one of you did this to me? Fine. Fine. You know what? It's the last one. And then you don't get any more. Anyone can make their own railway. Low-cost track design for narrow-gauge rail. God damn it. Oh. Oh my god. Who did this? Who is Bureaucramancer? And you are now on my enemies list. Oh, no.
Thousands of years before the first trains came along, people were building railways. Because railways are an excellent way to move heavy loads across rough and wet ground. Well, I have some rough and wet ground and heavy loads to move, so I'm going to build a railway too. Up this field and into the drying tunnel at the top. One day it will go much further, I hope, but that will do for now. But how to build a railway cheaply and easily? Well, the first railways were just wooden poles laid on the ground for logs to roll on.
Somebody would. Somebody had to, of course, put a train video in the reactor.
And then came split poles or planks with a flatter top for wheels to roll on.
You know, making your own rail is kind of
were
interesting,
added
so
to
let's go
stop
with
the
it.
wheels falling off the track.
This is a rail video I
Iron
can
rails
get
didn't
behind.
come in until the 1700s. And steel rails, as we see them these days, are only 150 years old or so, they don't have sides. Instead, the wheels have sides, or flanges, to keep them on the tracks. Here's some modern rail track. We built our house on it. Well, a few lengths of it, because it's strong and rigid. But of course, this is made for massive trains to run on, so it's crazy heavy, very expensive, and impossible to bend. You can buy scaled-down versions of this for narrow-gauge railways, but not in Ireland as far as I know, and anyway it's very expensive. So I've been scratching my head to come up with a really simple way to make track that anyone can build, somewhere between round wooden poles thrown on the ground and high-tech engineering. I'm going with flat bar steel. It's easy to get hold of, it's cheap, and it's easy to bend, which is important, otherwise how are you going to go round corners? This is 50mm by 8.
This guy's got the same
It's
accent as
plenty
Tom
strong enough
Nicholas.
for the job, I think. Next, we need some sleepers, also known as ties.
We need to make things more rigid from Alice. Oh yeah. More rigid, more good.
We're cutting ours on the homemade bandsaw, but you could use 2x4s just as well. These are spruce trees from the hedge. It's not great timber, and they won't last many years, but they are free, and they're easy to replace. I'm going to creosote them, and not expect too much.
Is this an Irish accent? Like North Irish, maybe? It feels like it's an English accent.
The bandsaw is working well, though I had to stop and replace the pull cord. And I had to figure out how to hold planks upright. I made some plywood cams to do this, and they work fine.
Call that accent round British. Oh yeah? What does that mean?
As I say, you could just go and buy some 2x4s and skip all this, but I thought you might like to see how I'm doing it.
I don't know what a round British accent
So now
is.
we have the sleepers and the rails, but how to connect them in a simple way, keeping the rail upright. This is what I came up with. Lots of short lengths of galvanized pipe. It's really cheap and it won't bend. I drilled a 6mm hole through them up near the top and 2 holes in each sleeper. You wouldn't need a pillar drill like this, but it helps to keep the holes vertical. The pipes are held rigid and upright in the wood at the correct distance.
We need a British person to weigh in to find out where this accent's from.
I drilled lots of 6mm holes through the metal bar too, and used 6mm gutter bolts from the inside, and that
A lot of
seems to
English
work.
accents come down to
It's
what degree of North
it's so
you
easy,
are,
it seems
right?
like cheating somehow. Yes, the wheel flanges.
Oh, it
might
could be a
foul the
Welsh
boat
accent.
head, but,
That could be one.
I'll go into that in another video. Basically, I don't think it's going to be a problem. The bolt doesn't need to take any weight, it just needs to hold the rail vertical. So these little gutter bolts should be strong enough, but we'll see.
Cornish.
And if this all works, this surely has to be the easiest and cheapest way ever to make a railway. You could do the same with just a drill and 2 slices of drill bit, an angle grinder and a handsaw. And if you did that, then we both have railways, which would be fun, wouldn't it? Especially if we could join them up somehow.
Oh man. This guy's going all out.
This will be 15-inch gauge track, which means
Is this
15
is this
inches
a
between
Cornish
the rails,
accent?
but there are all sorts of gauges of track, from 5 inches right up to 7 or 8 feet. It just depends what sort of trains you want to run on your tracks.
People
and how fast
love
they will go.
talking about railroad gauges.
This isn't a toy railway or a model railway. It's going to be a useful working railway, just quite small. I'll need to add some ballast, which is just lots of small stones to support and level the sleepers. But look, I've made a start, which is really exciting. And there are all sorts of other interesting challenges to work out, like the fish plates that connect the rails, and points or switches for going off in another direction. How am I going to make those? And of course,
Gosh, this guy's just
there's the
Minecrafting
rolling
in real life.
to go on top of the rails. So tune in next time for the next thrilling installment.
Jeez. Well, there you go. So that was a thing. Alright, let's see. I want to try to get as many in as possible. So next up is, what is solar punk? Let's find out. Don't know. What is solar punk by St. Andrew, who was on my Maroons video. Let's do this.
Solarpunk, one of my favorite fusions of arts and politics. Solarpunk is everything from a positive imagining of our collective futures to actually creating it. It derives its name from the cyberpunk genre and all the other punks it has spawned. Real quick, there's steampunk, which focuses on the industrial revolution and steam-powered tech. It's one of the most popular after cyberpunk. There's dieselpunk, focused on the designs of the interwar period. There's atompunk, focused on atomic power. Steelpunk, focused on late 20th century hardware. Stonepunk.
Yeah, so punk stuff is just usually taking like the science fiction of a older age and trying to figure out what kind of science fiction would come out of their concept of technology, I guess to say. You got like diesel punk, which takes like what a World War I person would think science fiction is and that kind of thing.
Punk, which is Neolithic, and there's even now punk, which is set today. Solarpunk is a shining vision of a positive future, grounded in our existing world that emphasizes the need for environmental sustainability, self-governance, and social justice. It's a movement dedicated to human-centric.
There's a diesel punk book called Bone Shaker, and I've always been curious about reading it. I don't know if it's any good though, but it's always been like one that I'm like, I'm probably gonna like read it someday.
And egocentric ends. It looks beyond the limitations of capitalism and beyond the current rift between humanity and nature. It's a futurism that focuses on what we should hope for rather than on what we should avoid. Solarpunk recognizes that climate change, the consequences of centuries of damage, aren't avoided in the future, yet it still manages to incorporate hope. A future where we've got a lot of work to do, and we're doing better, using technology from uplifting ends, like seed bombing.
Didn't the guy who wrote Red Mars, didn't he write a solarpunk book recently that takes place in like the sort of like Venice type city of New York City in the future?
Ruins and solar ovens. Solarpunk emphasizes real world application. It's all about what we do here and now, from DIY projects to larger organization. Solarpunk is also very aesthetic, as I'm sure you've realized. It uses a lot of nature motifs and takes inspiration from Art Nouveau, upcycling, and Asian and African styles and artistic movements. Side note though, let me talk real quick about what isn't solarpunk. It isn't slapping flowers and trees on concrete buildings, or steel skyscrapers with some green on it. That's greenwashing. It has the appearance of sustainability. It's actually really damaging to the environment. A lot of water is used to maintain those quote-unquote green buildings, and they often aren't built with sustainable or durable material. So get my guy. In the short time it has been conceived of, solarpunk has found a place in contemporary media. It's a literary genre after all, but it has been retroactively assigned to other things, since the term was really popularized in 2014. Solarpunk, for example, includes films like Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke, or literature like Starhawk's The Fifth Sacred Thing. Cyberpunk might be grim and pressing, exploring a world of unchecked corporate power, but Solarpunk rejects it entirely. It emphasizes collective living and the fulfillment of both nature and
Ken
humanity
Stanley Robinson,
in a
that's the
mutually
guy's name,
beneficial
yeah.
relationship. There's a full history of it linked below, but basically around 2008, a blog named Republic of the Bees published a post from steampunk to solarpunk, which conceptualized solarpunk as a literary genre inspired by steampunk. There were a few articles and works here and there, but it gained more steam, or should I say solar, with Miss Olivia Louise's Tumblr post in 2014.
So has anyone actually read Bone Shaker? And I just want to know if it's any good, really.
Establishing some of the aesthetics of solarpunk. Quote, a world in which children grow up being taught about building electronic tech, as well as food gardening and other skills. People have come back to appreciating artisans and craft people, from stonemasons and smithies to dressmakers and jewelers.
Man, this sounds base as shit. This is what I want. This is, how do I be a solar punk? Now that's solar punk.
And everyone in between. Her post
I
was later
want
referenced
solar punk 2077. Yeah.
Flynn in his Notes Towards Manifesto in late 2014, he describes the difficulty of being a futurist under 30, watching the world dive down the path of cyberpunk, the ever-present existential threat of climate change. Solarpunk to him is the only alternative to denial or despair.
Right now I'm reading a book called The Final Empire from like the Mistborn series, and I gotta say, not super impressed. I don't think I'm gonna continue the series, because this book is sort of like boring.
It rejects the individualistic, unsustainable approaches of some futurists, who refuse to acknowledge the limits of energy on Earth. Solarpunk is about ingenuity, generativity, independence, and community. It's suffixed by punk because it opposes our existing world. It creates local resilience, authorities be damned, from rooftop solar to guerrilla gardening. Finally, a group called the Solarpunk Community published...
Someone said, first up as a homeowner, kill your lawn, grow food or pollen plants. Yeah, Vigikuk, we have gardening plans here, don't worry. As we're starting to get ready to start planting stuff. We have bought a big old thing of wild native grass that we're going to plant. And we've got wildflowers that we're going to plant, and we've got a whole vegetable garden planned out, so... including a Three Sisters plot. I'm pretty excited.
Un Manifiesto Solarpunk in 2019. It's a short article written in Spanish that basically reiterates some of the previous ideas, albeit more succinctly. As for my relationship with Solarpunk, I've been into it for a pretty long time. I can't remember exactly where I first heard about it, but it was probably on Tumblr. It was also on Tumblr where I was introduced to the basics of revolutionary and progressive politics. Although Solarpunk never had a particular political ideology assigned to it, it's been embraced by liberatory ideologies of all flavors, from social ecologists to positive anarchists to green socialists. The philosophy of Solarpunk and the politics of anarchism are practically built for each other. Anarchism emphasizes personal freedom and collective liberation from hierarchies, authoritarianism, and...
Oh, we've got gardening plans. We're going to do it. We're going to plant the things. I don't know how much it's going to actually grow, but we're going to... It's just that it's early in the season to start doing garden stuff right now, so we're not... We've got some stuff that we're growing inside, and then because there's some stuff you have to grow inside until like you start planting things in May, and then there's some stuff that like we can't start even sowing until like mid-April. So it's we just gotta take time. It just takes time.
Exploitation. It seeks, as an ongoing project, common ownership, voluntary cooperation, horizontal organization, and mutual aid. Anarchism has generally been ahead of its time on many political issues, from queer to women's liberation, and its approach to ecology has been no different. Solarpunk can easily be synthesized with anarchism, and many of its various streams, as it explores possibilities of liberatory technology, localization of production, an end to destructive and wasteful consumption, and a reorientation of our relationship with society, work, nature, and ourselves. It all sounds pretty gooey and feel good, but I want to briefly address those that have lost hope in a better world. We're stuck thinking that this, largely, is the best that we can do. This idea in politics these days that imagination has no place.
What you're growing inside right now, we've got a pumpkin plant, a tomato plant, and a jalapeno plant that we need to get an early step on. I think maybe mint. I don't know.
It's in our quote-unquote pragmatic, no-nonsense world, which is just false. Humans are flexible creatures capable of a whole range of social arrangement. If everyone limited themselves to the confines of what is, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's time to take some steps forward, with a variety of tactics in hand. One of which is art. Art has tremendous influence on us.
Am I worried that my gardening will piss off the neighbors? Not really. There's no homeowners association or anything like that, so there's nothing they can really do. And our neighbors on either side are like an old lady and a small apartment building, so I don't think we're gonna get all that much. And our neighbor we're pretty friendly with. As long as we don't like plant something that starts like growing and taking over her backyard, I think we're going to be fine.
Music, books, paintings, TV shows, movies, etc. They shape our ideas of what humanity is and what humanity can be. While there have been many major examples of Solarpunk art and entertainment yet, I think we can change that. There are interesting stories to be explored and debates to be had through art. Imagine a novel that explores the different sides, dimensions, the debate on meat consumption.
Yeah, we're going to grow the mint in a pot.
In the Solarpunk world, or a comic that follows a community's journey as it seeks to rewild and resuscitate the surrounding ecology. Or, picture this, maybe alongside a game that imagines a horrifying endgame that maintains capsules.
Can I legally grow my own pot? Yeah. We're not going to, it's kind of tricky to grow, but yeah, we could if we want to.
That exercises our ability to balance the needs of our local ecosystem and deal with the difficult...
Callie and I usually smoke weed from, from like little vape pens that we buy oil from, so I don't know if like growing weed is going to be a thing that we get into.
decisions and conflicts that arise as we reorient our place in the world. Could call it Solarpunk 2033 or something. There's a free idea right there. There's so many ways to incorporate Solarpunk in your life and in your movements. It's pretty compatible with prefiguration, which I'm realizing to create a video about because people still seem to have some weird assumptions about what I, as an anarchist, want to do. More to the point, Solarpunk is truly something you can put into reality and practice and spread. Solarpunks can help create the future they want in various ways, from basic DIY living to maker workshops to creating and expanding eco living and local autonomy.
My gourd and bean for that, I don't remember what the bean is. I think it's just like a kind of like a green bean type crawling thing. The gourd is pumpkins. We're growing like these small pumpkins that are designed to be really good for pumpkin pies.
In our towns
and it is sweet corn,
Solarpunk is a
not
key piece in
grinding
the
corn.
mosaic of possibilities, the center of human adaptability, and the protection of nature, which our present world is organized to destroy, but our future world must prioritize. Solarpunk is a future with a human face and dirt behind its ears. Peace. Thank you for watching. For my Patreon.
That's pretty good. All right, next is Do No Harm, Black Medical Exploitation, Why African Americans Distrust Medical Experts. Okay, let's see what this is probably a bit of American history, which is something I know a bit about. So I bet I know a lot about this because there's a lot of fucking reasons why black people in America would distrust the medical establishment. So let's see where this goes.
Sensitive subjects in hopes to encourage more empathy and transparency in the future. Viewer discretion is advised. New York Presbyterian Hospital, May 23rd, 2020. A doctor sits in her office looking over slides in a microscope. She's exhausted, working at combating the coronavirus for what feels like an eternity. She has some fresh theories, but in order to find workable results, clinical trials must be broad and include a wide range of individuals. So she puts out a call for volunteers, and a week later, testing is underway. However, she notices that her pool of people isn't diverse enough to gather accurate enough data for the study. Specifically, very few people of color are volunteering. And when she sends med students out to canvass the streets for African Americans, those willing to stop and talk all say the same thing: no. Dejected, the med students return to the hospital. I don't understand, one says. Why don't they trust us?
We's about to find out about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Here we go.
This episode is brought to you by the Child and Teen Checkups Program of Minnesota. We know there can be lots of barriers that keep you and your family from getting to a medical clinic, but they're here to help. And children up to age 21 may even qualify for free checkups. Learn more at u21checkups.com. While that opening was a dramatization, the difficulty of recruiting Black Americans for a variety of medical studies is very real, and for good reason. Specifically, the deep-rooted distrust some members of the African American community feel toward the medical establishment, and it's entwined with the regrettable history of people of color being exploited by American doctors and medical organizations, stretching back to when they were the most vulnerable, slavery. As far back as the 1800s, it was commonplace for medical schools that needed human bodies for medical research or anatomical training to steal them from slave cemeteries. Then once the bodies served their purpose, they were often dropped in the sewers or incinerated. However, these American doctors didn't restrict themselves to the dead. Bringing us to James Marion Sims, a man who would be crowned as the father of modern gynecology. Originally from Lancaster County, South Carolina, he returned to his hometown to start his career, but then relocated to Montgomery, Alabama in 1835 after his first two patients died. Due to the poor state of 19th century American medical training and education, he was able to open a practice after only about a year of education between the Medical College of Charleston and Philadelphia's Jefferson Medical College. And it was in Montgomery that Sims became famous for treating vaginal issues, an area the almost universally male medical field neglected at the time. He invented the vaginal speculum, the duckbill-shaped device that, paired with mirrors, aided in vaginal and pelvic exams. He also established a procedure for the treatment of an agonizing childbirth complication that left a tear between the uterus and the bladder, which, if left untreated, would cause the patient to leak urine, leading to poor hygiene and being shunned by society. But between 1846 and 1849, in order to perfect his surgical repair technique, Sims operated on at least 7 enslaved black women without their consent, having only made various financial arrangements with their owners. And he actually operated on one of these poor women, a 17-year-old named Anarcha, 30 times. Because you see, for some reason, Sims and many other whites at the time didn't think black people experienced pain to the same degree that white people did. And as a result, he operated without using anesthesia, which was not widely available at the time. And though it was commonplace to prescribe painkillers during recovery after surgery, that too was an option Sims did not take. But his callous behavior did not end there. Since he'd managed to establish himself in Montgomery as the go-to doctor for patching up injured slaves and getting them back in the fields, this left him with an endless supply of test subjects, which eventually led him to doing experiments on black children. Attempting to find a treatment for a bacterial infection affecting newborns, Sims wrongfully concluded that it was caused by skull plates compacting in the birth canal. So he tried to cure newborns with experimental surgery by prying apart their skull plates with a shoemaker's tool. These surgeries had a 100% fatality rate, and he kept the dead children for dissection. It was often reported that it never occurred to Sims that he'd ever done anything wrong. Though as horrible as Sims was, he didn't withhold treatment in order to observe the long-term effects of a disease. That distinction falls to the United States government, which conducted the Tuskegee syphilis experiment from 1932 to 1972, which we already covered on our History of Syphilis series, but would be remiss if we didn't mention again here. But a separate injustice that occurred.
Hey, Matt, thank you for the super chat. In parts of Africa, anti-vaxxers claim vaccines are an attempt to sterilize blacks, which, considering that the apartheid South Africa actually tried doing that, I get the fear, even if it's wrong. Yeah, it's really terrifying.
Heard in 1927 was when the Supreme Court passed a eugenics law allowing for the sterilization of women without their permission if they were deemed morally or mentally unfit to procreate. A determination, you can imagine, often tainted by prejudice. Supposedly, this was to prevent society's defective members from being able to reproduce. At least 30 states took advantage of this and sterilized scores of women. But the worst offender by far was the state of North Carolina.
I did a video on that. I did a video on the North Carolina eugenics programs.
Established in 1933, approved at least 7,600 sterilizations for mostly poor black women. Many of those selected and forced into the procedures were children as young as 9. Another story of the medical industry taking advantage of people of color was that of Henrietta Lacks, a Baltimore-based mother of 5 who in 1951 suffered with pain and bleeding. She visited Johns Hopkins Hospital for treatment, and while the doctors treated her, they also harvested her cells for other means without her consent. Dr. George Otto Gay had been studying cervical cancer cells collected from various women over the years, but the cells he previously collected never lasted long enough for in-depth experimentation. That is, until he discovered Henrietta's cells were unusually long-lasting, so he gathered and exploited them without her knowledge. In the lab, Gay would name the cells after her, dubbing them HeLa cells, and they would become part of treatments for everything from Parkinson's disease to leukemia to Jonas Salk's polio vaccine, and Gay would go on to win 2 Nobel Prizes. Over the years, the list of HeLa cell studies have expanded to vaccines, cancer treatments, in vitro fertilization, a genome sequence, as well as studies on hormones and the...
I also talked about her in one of the very, very old Step Back videos about baddest women in history.
Effects of radiation exposure. In fact, as of 2018, there are 17,000 U.S. patents connected to Henrietta Lacks' HeLa cells. And while all of these breakthroughs were godsends to modern...
Yeah, so it's like saying it's unreasonable for this belief to persist to today. It's like, there was a guy who was like fucking doing hysterectomies on women in ICE prisons like not even a year ago.
Medicine. The children of Henrietta Lacks only became aware that their mother's cells were being used this way when researchers contacted the family and asked for more of them in 1973. This prompted them to seek ownership of their mother's exploited cells and to have a say on how they could be used. It wasn't until 2010 that Henrietta's enormous and invaluable contribution to medical science was finally recognized. So with terrifying and immoral stories like those we just discussed, and countless others like them, it's no wonder that present-day people of color remain skeptical of our medical system. And that skepticism, in turn, has been attributed for delaying treatment of conditions like diabetes, asthma, and heart disease until they've caused irreversible damage. In fact, statistically, African Americans are 3 times more likely to die from asthma as whites.
They still, like, that myth that black people experience less pain is still in some freaking nursing textbooks to this day.
60% more likely to develop diabetes.
Nurses who are usually in
40%
charge of helping them with their pain management, so that's great.
more likely to have high blood pressure. And helping to keep these issues alive are facts like 50% of medical trainees that were polled in 2016 still believe a number of falsehoods concerning African Americans and pain. These included the idea that black people don't feel pain the same way as whites, that they have less sensitive nerve endings, or even thicker skin. And I know that might sound unbelievable in this day and age, so to learn more about it, you can look at the link we provided below. It's a sobering look at how deep people's biases truly run. This long history of racism in medicine, when coupled with the general neglect and high expense of American healthcare, has led to our communities of color being prone to distrust the medical industry, and therefore delay preventative care, which in turn leaves treatable conditions to run rampant through communities of color at higher rates because they're often diagnosed too late. The lack of trust between our medical industry and our communities of color has had a terrible impact on people already marginalized by society. For everyone's sake, trust has to be reestablished, and decency has to become the norm. And we think that starts by not only recognizing this painful legacy, but also being open about it and calling it out where remnants of it still exist. Also, simple checkups and screenings that could mean the difference between life and death would help bring those distressing stats we mentioned earlier under control. So while we confront our own biases, let's make sure we empower everyone to become advocates for themselves and others when it comes to healthcare. Because one of the best ways to break the cycle is to not only start getting the preventative care that you need, but also preventative care you can trust. Once again, thanks so much to Child and Teen Checkups Program of Minnesota for sponsoring this episode. As we just discussed, we know that there can be lots of barriers that keep you from getting to a health clinic, but that's where Child and Teen Checkups Program can help. They provide resources for low-income families to take charge of their own health, including things like transportation assistance and interpreters. Not to mention dental health is included in their programs. But best of all, kids may even qualify for free annual checkups. You can get started today and learn more at u21checkups.com.
There you go. Oh, am I bumming people out? Oh dear. Okay. Yeah. Damn. All right. So, this one might give us something. Someone mentioned. So this is a video on vertical axis wind turbines. Let's see what this is all about. I'm kind of curious about these. I've been hearing a little bit about it, but I don't know much information.
Welcome to Engineering with Rosie. Vertical axis wind turbines. I have had quite a few requests for a video on this topic. People wanting to know about the aerodynamics so they can design one, and people wanting to know whether they are more efficient than horizontal axis turbines. So here is that video. I'm going to
spinny.
talk
It
about
is very
how they
spinny.
differ to horizontal axis wind turbines, and
Those are these turbines seem a lot more fun than the other ones.
advantages and disadvantages. I'm going to be following up with a video on vertical axis wind turbine aerodynamic analysis and design, and I will put a link here when I release that. So I want to start by saying that vertical axis wind turbines are pretty much a totally separate field from normal horizontal axis turbines. I don't actually know anyone who works with both horizontal and vertical axis turbines. In fact, I know probably hundreds of engineers who work on horizontal axis turbines and only one who works on vertical axis. And I fall into the first category. Professionally, I've only ever worked on horizontal axis turbines, and vertical axis has only been a personal interest for me. So that's the reason why it's taken me over 6 months from the first time someone suggested this video until I actually was able to make it. I had to learn about it myself. So vertical axis turbines are appealing for really different applications than horizontal ones. If you want to put a wind turbine on your roof or in your yard, for example, a vertical axis turbine is likely to be a better choice than a horizontal axis turbine. So for this reason, a lot of DIY and off-grid enthusiasts are interested in vertical axis turbines. And that's actually where I started looking into it myself. I wanted to make a backyard turbine just for the engineering challenge. Now, as I've gotten to know more about vertical axis turbines, I've learned that they can be very simple or they can be efficient, but they can't really do both. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why I think that, and you can tell me if you agree or not. Okay, so let's define what is a vertical axis wind turbine. Pretty much all of the large turbines you see around these days are horizontal axis. That means that the center of the rotor and the shaft it rotates is horizontal, parallel with the direction of the wind. So vertical axis wind turbines flip that, with the rotating shaft oriented vertically, perpendicular to the direction of the wind. And actually it's this last point that defines VAWTs, that axis of rotation is perpendicular to the wind. So a design that looks like a hamster wheel, where the shaft is horizontal but perpendicular to the wind, would normally actually be grouped with the vertical axis turbines. So there are a lot of different types of vertical axis wind turbines.
People are talking about using these on Mars, if I remember correctly.
But they all fit into two broad categories, either drag type or lift type, also known as Savonius and Darius type. To give a 5-second explanation of the difference between the two, drag type Savonius are very simple and very inefficient, and lift type vertical axis turbines are more complex and more efficient. So what about in comparison to horizontal axis turbines? There are a few axis or vertical axis turbines that can be simpler than horizontal axis designs. A lot of the complicated components that are located like hundreds of meters up in the air for a horizontal axis turbine can be located at the ground level for a vertical axis one. So the generator and the gearbox, for example, they have to be located at the end of the shaft, and for a horizontal axis wind turbine, that's at the top of the tower. But for vertical axis wind turbines, the end of the shaft is on the ground, so you can put these complex components there, which makes maintenance much easier and cheaper.
Oh yeah, if you've ever seen like people who do like maintenance on wind turbines, like, oh my god, they have to be so high in the air, it's ridiculous. It probably also means that they can be a lot cheaper.
So next, the aerodynamics of a vertical axis turbine can result in a simpler blade geometry. I've talked a lot on this channel about horizontal axis wind turbine design, and especially about the aerodynamic design of their blades. It's complicated because the blades are rotating around a horizontal axis, so the local airflow speed is different along the length of the blade, and that's why they need to be tapered and twisted to account for this. So that's perhaps the most obvious reason to think of a vertical axis instead. The blade aerodynamic design can be much simpler. Another benefit of the vertical axis is that the blade tip speeds are usually lower than on horizontal axis wind turbine blades, where the local airflow over the blade is faster at the blade tip than the root due to the rotational speed. So for horizontal axis turbines, if you keep the rotational speed the same but increase the blade length, then the tip speed increases. And this is a challenge for wind turbine designers because the turbine noise is strongly related to the blade tip speed. So vertical axis wind turbines can be a lot quieter than horizontal axis turbines. Another design aspect of VAWTs that can be simpler than HAWTs is that it doesn't necessarily matter what direction the wind comes from. Because the blades are rotating around a vertical axis, whether the wind comes from the front or the back or the side, it doesn't matter. And because of this, you don't need to yaw them to face the wind like you do with a horizontal axis turbine. So you can get rid of that whole yaw system. And this omnidirectional nature also means that they tend to perform better in turbulent or gusty winds than horizontal axis turbines do. So these are very common wind conditions in urban environments or low to the ground. So you may have noticed that horizontal axis turbines are getting taller and offshore turbines are becoming more common. Both of these trends are a way to reach higher quality wind resources. Vertical axis turbines aren't as badly affected by turbulence or gusts, and together with the fact that they're often less noisy than similar horizontal axis turbines, it can make them a good alternative for distributed generation devices in urban environments.
Yes.
But
wind turbine in every home.
Even if you can improve the efficiency of turbines in these kinds of wind resources, you're only capturing a greater share of much smaller potential. The maximum energy capture from wind depends on the wind speed cubed. So that means if you double the wind speed, there's potentially 8 times more energy available. So it's much easier to get more energy by moving to a higher quality wind site than it is by trying to make a more efficient turbine in a low quality site. So you would need to have reasons other than efficiency to want to put wind turbines in urban locations where the wind resource
Wouldn't it just
isn't
make
as
things
good.
more stable? I don't know.
And so what about efficiency? Are vertical axis wind turbines as efficient as horizontal axis turbines, or maybe even more efficient because they can capture energy on the upward side of the rotor and again on the downwind side? So for Savonius type machines, the answer is simple. Because they are drag based and they have this issue of the returning blades drag fighting the advancing blades, they're less efficient. They're only able to reach about half the Betz limit, which is the maximum theoretical power that a horizontal axis turbine can extract. I have a whole video about the Betz limit and how much energy is in the wind, so you can check that out here if you want to know more about that theory. But Darius type turbines are lift-based, and their orientation means that in addition to capturing some energy from the upwind blades, you do also capture some from the downwind blade. It's like a kind of double dipping. Of course, the upwind blades have already extracted some of the energy from the wind, so by the time it reaches the downwind side, it's slower with less energy. In a typical actually existing vertical axis wind turbine, and by actually existing I mean not a sketch on the back of an envelope or a computer simulation that someone made a YouTube video about, in these real vertical axis turbines, about 80% of the turbine's power is generated by the upwind blades and 20% by the downwind blades. And so far, vertical axis wind turbines are all a lot less efficient than a standard horizontal axis one. I haven't seen any commercial vertical axis wind turbines promising over 41% efficiency, and actually most of them are in the 30s. You compare that to most modern horizontal axis utility scale turbines, and they're in the high 40s. But are they necessarily less efficient, or have we just not seen a great BAWT design yet? Is the maximum efficiency of a vertical axis wind turbine limited by the Betz limit, the same as a horizontal axis one? The answer to that is no, the theory doesn't apply, and there isn't an equivalent theory for vertical axis turbines, at least as far as I could find. Okay, so maybe they can be more efficient, but how might we actually get some of this increased efficiency? You would need to improve on today's designs, which are all less efficient than horizontal axis wind turbines. So to do this, you'd probably want to increase the rotor diameter so you could get as much separation between the upwind and the downwind blades and hopefully have better wind quality on the downwind side. But making the diameter larger will cause lots of practical problems, which you'll end up adding complexity to solve. There's several other ways that you can increase the efficiency of vertical axis wind turbines, and I will be going through those in the next video. But in all cases, to get the extra efficiency, you need to add complexity. So I would want to see a functioning and reliable prototype of a new vertical axis design that claims to beat horizontal axis efficiencies before I was willing to believe that it was going to shake up the industry too much. So if you want more information on wind turbine aerodynamics, then have a look at the playlist I made on that topic, and I'll link to that in the description. And if you're interested in other engineering issues related to wind energy and other green energy topics, then please subscribe and check out the other videos on my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
No, isn't okay. I learned some stuff. Democracy Now! Reported that GEO group in charge of immigrant prisoners was using a pesticide on them and presenting it was a coronavirus disinfectant. I did hear that this morning. Going great, everybody. Going great. Okay. We're going to have to... Okay, we got one left. We got time for one more video. And we're going to play it a little fast because we don't have quite enough time to watch it if we stop. So we're going to play it at, I don't know, 1.5. It's Trey the Explainer, so hopefully it'll cancel out some stuff. So his normal cadence. Yeah, let's go at 1.5, and then we'll wrap up after this video is done.
Hello there guys, and welcome to another installment of Trey the Explainer. The way human history is often taught in classrooms nowadays can seem kind of boring, in my opinion. Centuries of history are boiled down to socio-economic trends and major cultural shifts. Don't get me wrong, this perspective is important, but I think it removes the humanity of history. Past peoples become these shapeless and faceless blobs that we never really get to meet or understand.
It's the story of Anfem, which I remember correctly is like this child in the city of Novgorod who like wrote a bunch of stuff and had a bunch of homework and stuff when he was a child. And so you get to see like what like a 7-year-old's life in the medieval times was like.
Lack any kind of agency or individuality. Modern audiences can walk away with the idea that people in the past were simple, brutish, and far too different to be like us. But that's not what it was like at all. History was built on the lives of millions of individual people. Not just Julius Caesar, but Caesar's cobbler, Caesar's cook, the orphaned child who watched him ride by from a back alley in Rome, the Chinese rice farmer thousands of miles away who lived at the exact same time but would never hear the general's name, someone's favorite grandma weaving baskets on the other side of the globe. All their lives were emotional, complicated, messy, and at times very beautiful. Humans, as far as we can tell, have always been, well, human. Every single one of them had that spark of humanity. They lived, they grew up, they loved, they hated, they told the truth, they lied, they could be cruel, they could be goofy and dorky, and above all else, they dreamed. Every time I see a human skull, and I do this quite a bit, I often wonder what types of dreams once swirled around within it. Believe me, humans have not changed much over several thousand years. I think that nothing illustrates this fact better than when you look at ancient graffiti in ancient cities like Pompeii. What archaeologists find is not the refined speech of playwrights or historians, but the common everyday gossip of the small folk, the countless nameless people that never get so much as a mention in the historical accounts. They offer a rare glance into the entirely ordinary and mundane life of the average person, filled with incredibly endearing dirty jokes that are somehow still relatable to a person reading them 2,000 years removed. In Pompeii, for example, you'll find quotes like this. "Weep, girls, my penis has given you up. Now it penetrates men's behinds. Implicatus, I know that Icarus is buckering you. Hehe, I screwed a lot of girls here. Ha, cruel Lagos, why do you not love me?" Okay, these ones are pretty cute. If anyone does not believe in Venus, they should gaze at my girlfriend. Hectus, baby, Mercator says hello. And of course, who could forget the famous, "We two dear men, friends forever, we were here. If you want to know our names, they were Gaius and Alus." Can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that these two pros felt the need to eternalize their best broness forever? Oh, find yourself a person like that.
So
These
much
are all
penises,
translated
yeah,
quotes
for
that
real.
totally wouldn't be out of place on a
Ancient
modern-day
Roman
social media
shitposting.
platform.
Yeah, look at
If we
that.
just change the names a little bit.
You use that drawing.
Atop the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, runic inscriptions
Classic.
were discovered on a marble parapet. The inscription was 1,100 years old, and it was initially suspected that it served some kind of sacred religious importance. But a subsequent translation revealed that the writing reads as Halfdan carved these runes, or simply Halfdan was here. Historians determined that the engraving was made by a Viking named Halfdan, who was hired as a guard. Apparently, he grew tired of his guarding duties and decided to write his name on a nearby stone, only for us to rediscover centuries later. I don't think this will be a surprise at all, but this type of "I was here" graffiti is pretty much universal to all humans. The tomb of Ramses VI has a complaint on its walls written in ancient Greek, angrily proclaiming, "I visited, and I did not like anything except the sarcophagus. Behold, the oldest Yelp review in history. Oh God, forgive the one who wrote this writing. This is an inscription that I wrote with my own hand. My hand will wear out, but the inscription will remain." I guess that aged really well. I could really go on and on talking about these examples forever, but there's one that really resonates with me in particular. Nestled along the shores of the river Volkhov, the city of Novgorod, Novgorod the Great, proudly stands as one of Russia's oldest cities. It is believed that Novgorod was initially founded sometime prior to the 800s AD to facilitate trade between the Greeks to the far south and the Varangians or Vikings to the far north. By the Middle Ages, the city's strategic position along this trade route allowed it to grow rich, both in wealth and in culture. In the 1950s,
Let's
archaeological
slow it down a little
excavations
bit.
of Novgorod discovered
But this is history. This is the history I love to hear about.
a treasure trove unlike any other. Not of gold or silver, but of documents. The thick and waterlogged clay
This
soil
famous
had
bullshit
preserved
aliens
tens
built
of
all
thousands
this
of
stuff.
thin birch tree bark
Oh,
sheets.
boy.
Prior to the mass production of paper, birchwood bark provided people, in antiquity, a cheap and easy alternative, wherever such trees were in ample supply. Novgorod was one such place. Using a metal or bone stylus, Novgorodians could inscribe letters and words into the abundant tree bark to record details of their everyday life. Over time, these documents created a lot of clutter, and eventually people would need to dispose of old and unwanted notes and rough drafts. This is exactly what occurred with the Novgorod treasure trove. Just like us, medieval Novgorodians during the 11th to 15th centuries threw away their useless bits of paper in a dump, not giving them as much as a second thought, and never knowing that scientists centuries later would marvel at their old garbage. Just like the graffiti at Pompeii, these amazingly preserved birch documents offer an unprecedented level of insight into the daily lives of
Fucking
medieval people.
adorable, the stuff that's going to
For
come
one
out.
thing, they illustrate that a surprisingly high portion of the population appears to have been literate, at a time where having the ability to read and write was still pretty rare. Most of these documents were ledgers, monetary agreements, and transactions. However, others were personal letters. Several belonged to a female weaver named Nastasia. Sometime during the 1400s, her husband Boris asked her to send him his favorite set of shirts, which he evidently forgot to take with him on a lengthy journey. Rather sadly, we later learn that from another of Nastasia's letters, this time sent to her parents, that Boris has sadly died. We've got a love letter from Nikita to Yulanitsa. Marry me, I want you, and you want me. Our witness will be Ignato. But probably most fascinating of them all, we've got, I kid you not, a child's homework of all things.
Yes!
Amongst the many thousands of birchwood bark manuscripts,
Go
17
on, fam.
items, all dating to the 13th century, appear to have been from a single individual. On many of these documents, he signed his name in a very distinctive hand, Anfim, or Anfim. Anfim was a Novgorodian boy, and judging from his handwriting, he was somewhere between the ages of 6 and 10 years old at the time. About 800 years ago, Anfim was writing out the old Novgorodian alphabet, practicing syllables, and learning verses of the Bible. His writings were almost definitely homework lessons and exercises given to him by his schoolteacher. However, Anfim didn't just write, he drew. 12 of the 17 pages contained illustrations, doodled in the corners and margins.
I love it so
Anfim
much.
sketched dozens of small characters, medieval stick figures of perhaps himself, his friends, and maybe even his teacher or parents. We can tell that Anfim had a very active
Reaching through time, it's so cool.
imagination. He was obsessed with scenes of battles and knightly valor. On the page, simply numbered by archaeologist 200, he had apparently begun to write out the first 11 letters of the alphabet, only to get bored and doodle an image of a man riding atop a horse, thundering down and slaying a foe with a long lance. Anfim curiously wrote out his name next to the mounted figure. It is possible that this was intended to be a label, and Anfim was in fact envisioning himself as the heroic warrior, hinting at his dream of someday becoming a knight. On the back of another one of his assignments, Anfim drew a fantastical creature with a long horse-like neck, cat-like pointed ears, and a curly tail. Around its neck, Anfim writes, "I am the wild beast," again suggesting the doodle is an imaginary self-portrait of sorts. The beastly Anfim either has a long forked tongue or is spewing fire like a dragon. The text box or speech bubble next to it says, "Greetings from Anfim to Daniel," a message perhaps intended for one of the boy's friends. Page number 203 depicts a character fighting an eldritch abomination of some kind, possibly a person on fire or with long shaggy hair, or a priest clutching a poisonous snake. Even archaeologists aren't quite sure. Above the chaotic scene, the young boy writes, "Lord, help your servant Anfim." Although these sketches might have angered his instructor, they reveal a lot of endearing and adorable details about Anfim. I'm reminded of my own middle school doodles, the bizarre aliens and dinosaurs I conjured up from my imagination while daydreaming
such a good
during a long
artist.
and somewhat boring day of classes. Whatever happened to Anfim? We will
Even
probably
his
never
shit
know.
sketches are
As far as we
better
can
than
tell,
anything I could draw.
all we have of this artistic genius are a few scraps of paper and nothing more. After that, he disappears from the Birchwood records in our limited view of history. Did he become a brave knight as he dreamed? Did he ever grow up and get married? Did he finally master his understanding of the alphabet? The date of Anfim's writings are somewhat unclear, as the archaeological methods have a certain degree of error. Some studies suggest they were made around the 1220s
What channel is this? This is Trey the Explainer. Great YouTube channel, one of my faves.
to 1230s AD, while other sources suggest a couple decades later, in the 1260s. The funny thing is that depending on the date you favor, Anfim might have grown up to fight in one of the craziest battles in military history, the Battle on the Ice, where the Prince of Novgorod, Alexander Nevsky, and his army defeated the evil order of the Teutonic Knights. The battle was literally fought on top of a frozen lake. Anfim could have been in his late teens or early 20s around that time. Is it possible that he might have served as a squire, or maybe even a knight in the conflict? Maybe. It is also possible that he was born after it. Whatever the case, we will likely never know. It is doubtful
He was
that
the
Anfim
voice
had
of the dude who
any clue
shot
that his
McKinley in my
drawings would
video.
be
Yeah,
viewed by
Leon
thousands
Shulgosh.
many centuries after his death, bringing his creations to life using magic. There might be 20,000 more of these birchwood texts still buried under the Russian clay. Maybe we have not seen the last of this creative young kid. Stories like Anfim's makes me feel a very oddly specific and hard to describe emotion. Sonderer. The realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. Every human that has existed on this planet had their own dreams and complex emotions. They were just like you and I, but most of them we will never get the chance to know. All the traces that ever were have disappeared, lost to us now. It is only through pieces of tree bark or scratches on the wall, a golden record, a handprint, that these stories have been preserved, passed down to us over the vastness of time. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, never knowing their works would survive. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day. Easy to see.
Alrighty. So, it is 2 o'clock. We have come to the end of the reactor. It's been a fun project. I know it didn't last super long. It's sort of a thing I started doing when we moved to London. And so it's been about, 9 months or so. But we had a good time. We we had good times. We also had train times. Yeah, to sort of wrap up and explain one last time, I'm opening up some more space in my weekly schedule to work on more videos and do more projects, and as a way to sort of balance out my work-life balance and everything. So that's the reason. So now I'm going to ceremoniously delete the Reactor channel in the Step Back Discord. And there it goes. So I hope that you guys had fun. I'll still be streaming. Maybe we'll watch some videos sometime. Who knows? But I'm sure you guys will have a lot of fun. We got plenty of stuff to do. So, everybody, we're going to raid. Who are we gonna raid? I think I saw that Lumiru was streaming. Did I see that? I thought I saw that. Well, there's nobody on. Which makes me think that maybe they're still getting started or something. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this. Oh yeah, they're just starting, so this should be good. All right, everybody, but take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Be good. They're doing a. Okay, let's get that then. Let's get the Possum Queen then. If they're doing a charity thing, let's have this. Let's have this old show's swan song be something to help the world. All right. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Much love, and I will be back on Monday. And remember, next week on Friday, I'm doing Step Back Tonight, where we're going to have Mexi on. So take care.